Imagine a world where the most powerful knowledge about the human mind, the soul, and the universe was carefully preserved for thousands of years, hidden away in temples and passed down only to the worthy. This knowledge was not written in books, but encoded in symbols, rituals, and sacred architecture. It was taught in whispers beneath the stars and carved into the stones of the pyramids. The Egyptian mystery schools were not just places of learning. They were sacred centers of transformation, of deep spiritual initiation, where students were trained to awaken the full potential of their inner power, not through external force, but through understanding the laws of the universe and mastering the self. Today, we live in a fast world filled with distractions, noise, and superficial knowledge, yet buried in the sands of time are 35 ancient teachings that have the potential to completely shift how you see yourself and the world, teachings that invite you to go deeper, to remember who you really are, to activate the wisdom that already lives inside of you. In this video, we are going to explore 35 powerful lessons from the ancient Egyptian mystery schools, lessons that have been forgotten by the modern world, but are now resurfacing for those who are ready to awaken. Stay with me until the very end, because one of these teachings might be the exact key you've been waiting for to unlock the next level of your life. The origins of the Egyptian mystery schools stretch back over 5,000 years, rooted in the sacred lands of Kemet, what we now call ancient Egypt. These schools were not ordinary places of education. They were spiritual institutions where knowledge of the divine, the cosmos, and the self was transmitted from teacher to student in complete secrecy and with great reverence. These teachings were said to have been given by Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and magic, who was believed to be the divine scribe of the gods. Thoth taught humanity how to align with divine order, how to use thought as a creative force, and how to unlock the hidden powers within the body and the soul. His wisdom formed the foundation of the mystery schools. The temples of Heliopolis, Thebes, and Memphis were considered sacred universities, where only the most disciplined and spiritually prepared individuals could enter. Initiation into these schools was not about status or wealth. It was about one's readiness to embark on the inner journey of transformation. Initiates would spend years studying symbolism, sacred geometry, astrology, alchemy, and the deeper meanings behind myths and rituals. These schools were not only concerned with knowledge, but with transformation. They believed that true wisdom could only be gained through direct experience and inner awakening, not just memorization or belief. Their ultimate goal was to create enlightened beings, individuals who had mastered themselves, who could live in harmony with the universe, and who could guide others through their own path of awakening. What made the Egyptian mystery schools so unique was their understanding that everything in the universe is connected, that every aspect of life holds deeper meaning, and that by understanding the divine patterns in nature and within ourselves, we could tap into unlimited potential. This sacred science was once the highest knowledge on earth, and today, fragments of it still whisper to those who are ready to listen. The first and perhaps most powerful truth taught in the Egyptian mystery schools is that the mind is the key. Everything begins with thought. Everything is shaped by thought, and everything returns to thought. In the eyes of the ancient initiates, your mind is not just a tool. It is the gateway to divine creation. They believed that the universe itself is a mental construct, and that by understanding your mind, you begin to understand the fabric of reality itself. They taught that thought creates reality. What you hold consistently in your mind becomes your experience, not just metaphorically, but quite literally. Your inner world shapes your outer world. If you think with clarity, purpose, and discipline, your life will reflect that energy. But if your mind is scattered, chaotic, or rooted in fear, then your external world will mirror that confusion. So mastering the mind was considered a sacred duty. Silence was not seen as emptiness, but as the gateway to wisdom. In the mystery schools, silence was where the true voice of intuition could finally be heard. Students were trained to still their thoughts, to quiet the noise of the ego, and to listen deeply to the whispers of the divine mind within. This is where true insight begins, not from loud opinions or borrowed beliefs, but from inner stillness. Daily reflection was one of the core practices taught. Every day, initiates would review their actions, emotions, and thoughts, not to judge themselves, but to understand. They believed that self-awareness was the foundation of power, and that without reflection, one could never truly evolve. The mind must be observed, not blindly followed. Imagination was revered as more than fantasy. It was considered a form of divine communication. When an initiate would imagine with intensity and clarity, they were opening themselves to messages from higher realms. Imagination was seen as the sacred space where inner truth and higher knowledge could be revealed. They knew that what the mind can see, the soul can create. Symbols were used as tools to awaken the deeper mind. The subconscious does not respond to ordinary words, it responds to images, to archetypes, to symbols. This is why the walls of the temples were covered with hieroglyphs and sacred art, not just for beauty, but to unlock codes within the mind of the observer. Every symbol is a key, every image a doorway to higher awareness. Focus was regarded as a divine force. Whatever you give your attention to begins to grow. Initiates were taught to guard their attention carefully, because scattered focus leads to scattered energy, and scattered energy leads to a scattered life. When you concentrate your mind on a single aim, your inner power begins to move like a laser, precise and unstoppable. Finally, they taught that you become what you contemplate. Whatever you allow your mind to dwell upon will shape your essence. So choose your thoughts as you would choose the seeds you plant in sacred ground, because eventually they will grow into the reality you call your life. In this way, the mystery schools made it clear that the mind is not just part of the journey, it is the very beginning of it. In the Egyptian mystery schools, the body was not viewed as something separate from spirit. It was seen as a sacred temple, a living vessel designed to hold divine energy. The physical form was not dismissed or ignored. It was honored, purified, and prepared to become a channel for higher consciousness. They taught that the path to awakening required both the elevation of the mind and the refinement of the body. To treat the body with disrespect was to dishonor the divine force that lived within it. This is why the ancient Egyptians placed so much importance on rituals of cleanliness, sacred movement, and the power of breath. They believed that the body, when aligned and harmonized, could access hidden energies that are normally dormant in most people, energies that connect us to the cosmos, to nature, and to our own divine essence. The temples themselves were designed to mirror the human body. Every hall, every chamber, every pillar represented different aspects of the human energy system. As the initiates walked through the temple, they were symbolically traveling through their own internal structure, activating each energy center, clearing old patterns, and awakening new levels of power. They understood that every emotion, every thought, and every experience leaves a trace in the body. It becomes stored in the muscles, in the organs, in the cells. So the mystery schools emphasized practices to cleanse and purify these energies, whether through sacred baths, breathwork, movement, sound healing, or rituals under the moonlight. The goal was to return the body to a state of balance, clarity, and flow. They believed that the body holds the memories of not just this lifetime, but many, and through focused inner work, one could access these hidden memories, these layers of experience, and transmute them into wisdom. Pain was not to be avoided, but understood and transformed. Every ache and every illness was seen as a message from the soul, calling for attention, for change, for alignment. One of the deepest teachings was that the body itself is a map. It reveals the truth of our thoughts, our choices, and our spiritual progress. The heart, for example, was considered the seat of truth, not just emotion, but spiritual intelligence. The Egyptians believed that in the afterlife, the heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth, and only those whose hearts were light and pure could move forward. They practiced conscious movement as a sacred act, walking with awareness, sitting in stillness, dancing with intention, because every movement of the body is also a movement of energy, and they knew that the way you carry yourself shapes the way energy flows through you. Posture, breath, and stillness were all part of the training to awaken inner power. Food was also seen as sacred, not just fuel but frequency. They believed that the things we eat either raise our vibration or lower it, that eating with gratitude and intention could turn even a simple meal into a spiritual experience. This awareness of the body as a temple extended into every choice, every moment, every breath. When you understand your body as a temple, you begin to treat yourself differently. You become more present, more respectful, more connected. The mystery schools taught that when the mind and the body are in harmony, you become a vessel for divine intelligence. You begin to live as your highest self, grounded in purpose, radiant with energy, and aligned with the sacred force that flows through all things. Spiritual alchemy was one of the most guarded and powerful teachings within the Egyptian mystery schools. It was not about turning lead into physical gold as many believe today. Instead, it was the sacred science of inner transformation, of turning the dense and unconscious parts of the self into something luminous, awakened, and divine. The process of spiritual alchemy begins with understanding that everything in the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. The elements of nature, earth, water, fire, air, and spirit were seen not only as external forces, but as symbols of the human condition. Earth represented the body and stability, water the emotions and intuition, fire the will and transformation, air the intellect and communication, and spirit, the divine presence that connects all things. The alchemist's work was to purify each of these elements within the self, to cleanse the emotional body of old pain, to clarify the mind from false beliefs, to awaken the fire of purpose and action, and to harmonize all aspects of the self under the guidance of spirit. This process was called the Great Work, and it was considered the highest goal of any seeker on the path of wisdom. The first stage of spiritual alchemy was called calcination. It represented the burning away of the ego, the shattering of illusions, and the destruction of false identities. This was often a painful process, where everything one thought they were begins to fall apart. But it was necessary, because only by facing the fire could the soul be revealed. After calcination came dissolution, a stage where the emotional body is purified, where attachments, fears, and grief rise to the surface, and where the waters of the soul begin to cleanse what the fire had exposed. During this stage, the initiate learns to surrender, to let go of control, and to flow with the wisdom of the inner self. Then came separation, where the initiate begins to see clearly what is true and what is not, what is essential and what is distraction. In this stage, one begins to reclaim lost parts of the self, strengths that were hidden beneath pain, clarity that was buried beneath noise, and power that was forgotten through time. Conjunction followed, a sacred moment where the purified aspects of self begin to merge into a new form. The masculine and feminine energies unite. The mind and heart begin to work together. The body and spirit come into alignment. This union creates a state of inner harmony and balance that opens the door to higher states of consciousness. Fermentation was next, the stage of spiritual rebirth, where a new sense of life begins to emerge from within. Like a seed breaking through the soil, the soul begins to rise with new energy, new vision, and deeper purpose. Dreams become clearer, intuition becomes stronger, and one begins to feel the presence of the divine in everyday life. Then came distillation, the refinement of wisdom, where the initiate rises above old habits and patterns, and begins to embody the higher self consistently. Clarity deepens, distractions fall away, and a sense of purity and purpose begins to take root in every choice, every word, and every action. Finally, the stage of coagulation, where spirit and matter become one, where the divine is no longer something distant or abstract, but something fully embodied, fully lived. The alchemist becomes the philosopher's stone, the awakened one who has turned inner lead into spiritual gold, who walks the earth not as a seeker, but as one who remembers. Spiritual alchemy was not a theory. It was a lived experience, a sacred journey that every student of the mystery schools was guided through step by step. They believed that true power comes not from control or dominance, but from transmutation, from the ability to change fear into courage, doubt into wisdom, and pain into light. This was the path of the ancient alchemists, and it still lives today in all those who are ready to transform. The concept of the cosmic order was one of the central teachings of the Egyptian mystery schools. They believed that everything in existence, from the smallest grain of sand to the vast stars above, was governed by a divine order, an invisible harmony that connected all things. This order was not random. It was purposeful, intelligent, and deeply sacred. They called this order Ma'at, not just a goddess, but a principle, a force that represented truth, balance, justice, and cosmic alignment. To live in Ma'at was to live in harmony with the universe, to walk the path of integrity, to speak truth, to act with compassion, and to honor the sacred in all things. Ma'at was the law behind the laws, the rhythm behind the seasons, the intelligence that guided both the stars and the soul. The ancient Egyptians saw the universe as a reflection of divine intelligence. The movement of the sun, the phases of the moon, the rising of Sirius, the flooding of the Nile, all were signs of the deeper rhythm of life. They believed that by observing nature, by aligning themselves with its patterns, they could awaken a deeper connection to the divine. The priests and priestesses were trained to read these cosmic signs, to understand the messages carried in dreams, in nature, in the cycles of the stars. They believed that the more aligned one became with the cosmic order, the more peace, clarity, and power would flow into their life. Chaos was not seen as an enemy, but as a sign of misalignment, a message that something needed to be remembered, realigned, restored. The temples were built with precise mathematical and astronomical knowledge, aligned with the stars and the solstices. They believed that when a person stood in a sacred space aligned with the heavens, they became a channel for cosmic wisdom. This was not just architecture, it was spiritual technology, a way to bring divine order down into human life. Initiates were taught to live with awareness of their place in the greater whole, Every action had a ripple. Every word carried weight. Every choice echoed into the universe. They were trained to listen, to feel, to act in ways that honored this sacred order. This wasn't about perfection. It was about awareness, about constantly returning to alignment, to truth, to the flow of Mot. They also believed that human beings carried within them a mirror of the cosmos, that just as the stars moved in the sky, so too did energies move through the body. The ancient teachings of astrology were not just about prediction, but about understanding the inner landscape of the soul. The planets represented archetypal forces within, and the movement of the heavens revealed what was moving inside. When you live in alignment with the cosmic order, you begin to feel a deep sense of peace, a knowing that you are supported, that you are part of something vast, intelligent, and beautiful. The confusion fades, the fear dissolves, and your actions become more intentional, more meaningful, more sacred. The mystery schools taught that this connection to the cosmic order is not something to be found outside. It is something to be awakened within. Through meditation, ritual, study, and self-inquiry, they guided their students to move beyond the illusions of separation and into a state of oneness with the universe. In this state, the initiate becomes not just a student of the mysteries, but a living expression of them, a being who moves with the rhythm of the stars, who speaks with the clarity of truth, and who lives each day as a sacred act of balance and beauty within the divine order of all things. Mastery of the self was considered the ultimate purpose of the teachings in the Egyptian mystery schools. Above all knowledge, above all rituals, the greatest temple one could ever enter was the temple within. The journey inward was the most sacred path. And those who walked it were seen not only as students, but as builders of their own divine nature. To master the self was not about control or suppression. It was about deep understanding, about knowing the layers of your being, the shadows and the light, the pain and the power, the illusions and the truths that live within. The ancient initiates were taught that every thought, every emotion, every reaction was a doorway into deeper awareness, and nothing within should be rejected or feared. Instead, it must be studied, understood, and transformed. They believed that the self was composed of many parts: the physical body, the emotional field, the mental realm, the energetic body, and the higher self or spirit. To master the self meant to bring all of these into harmony, where no part dominated or was denied, but each served its purpose under the guidance of higher wisdom. The first step on the path of self-mastery was observation, to become the watcher, the silent witness of your own life, to step back from reaction and see the patterns that play out within you. Why do you get angry? What fears control your choices? What stories run silently in the background of your mind? This awareness was the foundation, because what you do not see, you cannot change. From there, the initiate would begin to work with the will, strengthening their ability to choose rather than react, to act with intention rather than habit. Will was seen as the fire of transformation, the power that moves the soul forward. Without will, there is no mastery, only repetition. The exercises of discipline, fasting, meditation, silence, and physical training were not for punishment. They were for awakening the inner fire. Emotional mastery was also key. The ancient teachers knew that emotions are not enemies, they are messengers. Each emotion carries energy and meaning, and when understood, they become allies on the path. Fear points to where courage is needed, anger to where boundaries must be honored, sadness to where healing must take place. To master the self is not to be cold or numb, but to be emotionally wise, to feel deeply, but not be ruled by those feelings. Mental mastery followed, and this was one of the hardest steps, for the mind can be both servant and saboteur. The initiate learned to purify their thoughts, to release limiting beliefs, to reprogram the mind with truths that empowered rather than weakened. Mantras, sacred words, and focused visualization were used to reshape the inner landscape, because what the mind believes, the body follows, and what the body feels, the world reflects. Energetic mastery was next, learning to sense, direct, and cleanse the energy field. Breathwork, movement, sound, and sacred symbols were used to align the subtle body, to remove blocks, and to awaken the higher centers. The chakras or energy wheels were seen as gateways, and when balanced, they allowed the divine light to flow freely through the self. Finally, connection to the higher self was cultivated, the part of you that is eternal, wise, and free, the divine spark that remembers who you truly are. The initiates were taught to listen to this voice, to follow its guidance, and to let it lead the other parts into unity. Because true mastery is not about domination, it is about surrender to the highest within you. To master the self was to become whole, to become a clear channel for wisdom, love, and power, and from this place, all other mysteries could be understood, all other teachings became clear, because the truth is not found in books or temples alone. It is revealed in the one who has mastered the self and become the living temple of the divine. As we reach the end of this journey through the 35 lost teachings of the Egyptian mystery schools, take a moment to reflect on what has stirred within you. Perhaps it was the reminder that your mind holds infinite power, or the realization that your body is not just flesh and bone, but a sacred temple. Maybe it was the vision of spiritual alchemy, where your pain becomes your gold, or the deep truth that you are not separate from the stars, but an expression of the cosmic order itself. All of these teachings lead to one sacred truth, that the path to power is the path within. It is not something to be found outside. It is not something to chase. It is something to awaken, to remember, to reclaim. Within you lives the same wisdom that once filled the temples of ancient Kemet. Within you is the same fire that burned in the hearts of the initiates, the same courage, the same clarity, the same potential. These teachings are not just ancient, they are eternal. They are not just stories from a distant past. They are living codes waiting to be activated in you. And now that you've received them, the question becomes, what will you do with them? How will you walk through the world differently? What will you choose to remember? What will you now choose to master? Your thoughts, your words, your actions, they are all rituals. They are all spells shaping the world around you. And as the old teachings say, when you walk in alignment with truth, when you honor your body as a vessel of the divine, when you purify the mind and open the heart, when you master yourself, you do not just transform your life, you transform the world. If this message resonated with you, if you feel the ancient fire awakening inside, then I invite you to take the next step. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is ready to remember who they are. Leave a comment and tell us what part of the teachings spoke to your soul the most. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, because we are building a community of seekers, of initiates, of modern-day alchemists walking the path of awakening together. There is more to uncover, more to remember, more to activate, and this is just the beginning. The mystery schools may have been hidden for centuries, but their light never died. It lives in you now, so keep walking the path, keep listening to the voice within, and above all, never forget, you are the temple, you are the flame, and you are the key. Thank you for being here. Thank you for remembering. And until next time, may the wisdom of the ancients guide your every step, and may you walk always in truth, in power, and in peace.